We good, Coach? Oh, there we go. All right, now you can hear me even louder now, so you're welcome for that. But yeah, hey, good morning, everybody. I'm excited to be back up here speaking. Mr. Winters, I promise I won't do too terribly up here, so I won't scare everyone away. So I'm kind of on a streak here. I mean, for someone young like me in my generation, last time I gave the sermon here, the title was Don't Quit, Stay Lit, right? So I'm going to kind of continue this and talk about superheroes today. So I want to play a quick clip. Can you play that for me? Is that Amy back there? Can you play the clip up there? So, yeah, all right, I'll play it.
It's a missile. When it comes down, everyone will die. There it is! Shouldn't we get to a show?
You put on the next slide with all the, yeah, perfect, all right. So I realized I didn't really explain anything about that video before we played it, but have any of you guys, ever seen that movie before? Anyone recognize it? The Iron Giant, right? That was a classic favorite in my household. And so just a little explanation. So that robot, the big robot in there, crash landed onto that planet. And the little boy in there who was super sad, the robot going to sacrifice his life. The little boy came to find the robot and grow to like him, and he was spending the movie teaching the robot like the ways of the human life and showing him also about his comic books. And he was telling the robot about the character Superman. And he was telling the robot, because the robot was actually made for war, and it was like this alien robot, and it forgot completely that it came to destroy the planet. And so instead, the kid taught him how to be a superhero and told him about this idea of sacrificing your life for others. And so that's kind of the climax of the movie there. And so if you haven't seen it, I'm sorry, I showed you like the climax spoiler part of the whole entire film. But I promise you, it's a really great movie. Go watch it either way. It's great. So, but as the robot is flying into this missile that's heading for Earth, he says, Superman, right? So as the kid taught him all about Superman, he decided in that moment it's time for him to step in and to be the hero. And so growing up, I love superheroes. I have so many memories actually of me, Brock, and Brent running around their house playing as superheroes, and Brock was always the Flash, Brent was always Green Lantern, and I picked the weirdest character, the Martian Manhunter. I don't think anyone knows who that is, but I like that guy, and he was really great. And so superheroes are huge, especially to us young people, right? And it's just huge in general. Everybody likes the Marvel movies. Everybody DC's kind of doing all right, but the cartoons were great growing up. So, and I think that everybody inside kind of wants to be a hero in some way. And I think that's a really good thing. And growing up, I know, is watching all the movies, we always have the big climactic scenes like the one I just showed you, where this big world-changing moment when the superhero steps in and saves the day. And I think we all almost have a drive for something like that. But today I want to talk about that being a good thing. However, I think because we maybe only focus and only think that it's only in those situations we can be heroes, that sometimes we miss the times, that the everyday is when we can do something to actually help the world. And so I was going to say too is, it's kind of a common thing for everyone to say, I want to change the world, and including me. But then it turns out the world's pretty big. Right? The world is pretty big, and it's there's a lot going on in it with multiple nations and countries and things. And I mean, that's awesome to want to change the world, but there's a lot to do rather than, it's not like every day you get a moment like the Iron Giant on there to do something that big, large scale. But the point is, like I said, every day is what matters. So I think, though, that it is still really good to have this idea of changing the world, because God's whole story is about this, right? His whole story is about coming into our story and bringing about redemption. And so that's what we're going to start with. We're going to start with the very beginning of where the story kind of begins. So if you want to put up there. So we know how the story of the Bible begins with creation, all right? God bringing something out of nothing, him bringing order to chaos. And then we see the creation narrative where God creates the heavens, the skies, outer space. He creates the land and the seas. He fills them all with animals and stars and plants. And then on the sixth day, we see that he creates humanity, right? And so in Genesis 1:27 through 28, this says this: "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them." So when it says we were made in the image of God, I think it's the passage right after there that kind of explains what that means. "And God blessed them, and God said to them, 'Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth.'" So in this statement, what does it mean to be in the image of God? Well, what he mentioned here is for humanity to have this authoritative presence in what was known as every area of the universe, basically. Whenever they mentioned this kind of three-tiered structure in the Hebrew mind, this was them saying all creation. And so God's saying, let's make man in our own image. It's this idea of let's make man to be our authoritative representatives, to rule and to run creation and to facilitate it and to create, right? And to rule over it with us, right? With me. And so that is this amazing calling to humanity. That's this amazing purpose that we've been created to be co-rulers with God in this, right? And to have these awesome gifts and talents, to be fruitful with them, and to use them to design and create and to run and facilitate the activities of all of creation. It's pretty cool to think about it that way. I mean, you ever wake up and think it like that? The more I do that, the more I start to find a lot more purpose in my everyday of how can I help God today and rule? How can I use my gifts and talents to help bring order and peace into creation today? So God has this amazing plan, this amazing purpose for humanity, and we all know kind of how the story goes. There comes a wrench into the works. That humanity takes from what is known as the tree of knowledge and good and evil. So they kind of take this, instead of trusting in God for wisdom of what is right and wrong, what is true and false, it's the idea to kind of take that top spot and to decide in our own eyes what that is. And we all deal that today. We all deal and wrestle with that. And that kind of happened by the evil kind of slithering its way in, literally and metaphorically, right? But God has a promise for us, because even though we might break the promise with God, he never breaks his promise with us. Even though we might think we might be running away from God, he's always right there following us, right by our side. And this is what God said. This is what he said to evil in the serpent when it slithered its way in. He says, I'll put enmity between you and the woman, that's Eve in the story, between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. So he's saying, he's given us like kind of the plot line for the rest of the story, right? He's given us the structure, the plot. This is the great foreshadowing moment. The prophecy declares, and we get this big back and forth conflict between good and evil throughout the story. Humanity versus evil. And it's kind of this conflict for who's going to rule in creation. Is it going to be God's plan? Is it going to be him ruling with humanity, running a perfect and beautiful creation? Or is it going to be humanity giving into evil and bringing chaos and destruction into it? And notice here is how he says, through your offspring, right? Is that up there? Oh, good. All right. Through your offspring, right, he's talking about Eve, like there's going to be children, right? This idea of fruitful, multiply, families. It's like through this family line, I'm going to bring about this plan of redemption. And we're going to see here in a second where God like really starts this after Eve. And what he says there is, and then he kind of makes it a singular, he. I mean, I think we all know the story, right? He, as in Jesus, will crush the head of evil, right? And he will be bruised in the process. Just a little foreshadowing. Again, I'm bad with spoilers. I just showed you the Iron Giant thing. But just a little spoiler of what's to come. So can you put the next one up? So after this, and I have to go to my phone. I forgot to put it on my piece of paper here. So after this right here, we see actually a lot of this chaos that happened when humanity chose to rule without God. We see it start to multiply and start to become more violent and start to spread all across the earth. And we see nations, rather than working with God, starting to work together on their own and saying, we're going to just be like God ourselves, right? And so what happens is God has to separate that and spreads them all across the world, and you see all the different nations start following, what is right and wrong in their own eyes. And so God's like, man, what a mess. But you know what? I'm still faithful to my promises, and I'm still going to have humanity ruling with me, and we're still going to have a perfect creation someday. So God chooses for himself Abraham. Right? So there's this guy, Abraham, and he is caught up in this the weeds of all the nations, following what is right and wrong in their own eyes, worshiping different idols, different gods, and he chooses Abraham out of the mix to be someone where he's going to start this plan. Right? He is going to use him as the starting ground, the foundation for how he's going to save the world. And it's going to be right back to what he promised with Adam and Eve. This idea of the offspring, this idea of Jesus coming through. He's like, Abraham, through you, and that what it says up there, I will surely bless you, and I will surely multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven and as the sand that is on the seashore. And your offspring shall possess the gate of his enemies. I want you guys to remember that for later. And in your offspring shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. So he calls this guy Abraham. He's like, look, Abraham, through you, this promise of saving the world, right, is going to happen. And notice, read it in there. He says, through you, all the nations of the earth are going to be blessed, right? So he's starting out with this one guy, and there's a lot more of the story of Abraham. And this is like later on, him talking with Abraham again, re-saying this promise. But he's like, through you, there's going to be a great nation. The kingdom of God is going to be made fruitful, and it's going to bless the world. We're going to reverse the process of these curses. And so, now after this, you kind of get to watch that play out. And you actually see, though, that people like Abraham, like Adam and Eve, they're not really exactly the superheroes in the story. They make a lot of mistakes. A lot of like really big mistakes. And sometimes, you read through them, you're like, I can't believe they made those mistakes. Other times you're like, yep, I feel that. I feel that one. And it's typically things like right after God tells them one thing, it's like the next sentence is, and then they did this way. Like I said, definitely couldn't be me at all, not at all. But so that's the thing there is that, God has this grand story showing us that humanity alone cannot really fix this, right? Humanity by ourselves, like we can't really get out of this mess. There's going to be this conflict that just keeps coming. We're going to keep making mistakes. That's why we need a Superman figure, someone who is able to walk the line straight, is able to say no to evil and to right the wrongs. And that's what we get. Plot twist, spoiler, Jesus. He is the Superman figure. He's the one that we should all look to as the one who saves the day and has that grand moment. And like the video, Jesus gave up his life and took on the forces of evil on himself, showing the world that there's a better way, and rose again, and in the resurrection we have hope. And in this too, it's the fulfillment of what he promised to Abraham, because we are the nation that he promised to bless the world through. Those who follow Jesus are the nation that God wishes to redeem the world through. Right? And so let's go to Colossians 1:15 through 20. Here's a cool Superman passage about Jesus and what he did. So, perfect. All right, so here's just Paul, he liked to flex Jesus a lot. And that's something you notice throughout the Bible, especially I was reading through Hebrews the other day, and they're just like going after one after another, like, Jesus is so great. He's so awesome. He fulfilled this, fulfilled that. He's way better than anything in the old days. Like, he's come and he saved the world. And this is what Paul has to say. He says this about Jesus. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. He is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead. And in everything he might be preeminent. For in him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, making peace by the blood of the cross. So something to really see in the beginning here is notice where it starts, the context of how it starts. It talks about Jesus being the firstborn of creation, right? We know that Jesus, became human, being fully God, fully man, right? So he stepped right in here with us, right down to ground zero, and joined with us by becoming one of us. And so it also is saying he's the firstborn of creation. What that means is the firstborn, if you notice, in all the stories of the Bible and back then, the firstborn was the one to inherit the entire estate of his father, right? So Jesus, being the firstborn of creation, right, we know that he is the inheritor, the ruler of all that God has made. And so not only that, but that's where we're starting. We're starting with this grand vision of creation, right? The entire universe. And that's where we get the context of what Jesus comes and saves. Everything. It goes into it, and he says, he's reconciling all things to himself. That's humanity, that's animals, that's space, that's the heavens, that's land and trees and water. Everything you can think of, Jesus is restoring and bringing back to himself. And what does it say? Through what he did on the cross and in his resurrection, he's raising creation with him. And how is he going to do this? Well, we know, it says it right in there too. He is the head of the church, the head of his body, and that's the church. That's the kingdom that he was talking about, saying with Abraham, your nation is going to be great, and through that nation, we're going to bless the world. So I love what Mr. Winter said to me one time. He said that the church is God's mission plan, right? That's his mission, to change the world. It's through the church. It's through his body. And here it is. It's saying it right here is that Jesus is bringing all things together, reconciling things into himself. He's the head of the body, and the church is the rest of the body. He's reconciling all things through the church. We are his hands and his feet in this world. So it's this great big thing, and I want to show one more slide up there. You put that up there, Amy. And this is what Jesus said about the church. He says, "On this rock I'll build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." Remember that word gate? Remember what he said to Abraham back there? He says, you will have the gates of your enemy, right? And so he is saying, on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell, this disordered, chaotic realm of darkness and evil, will not prevail. And actually, you know what it's saying here? It's saying that, my people will possess the gates. It means that we're on the offensive here, right? That the church is on the offensive against the forces of darkness in this world. Meaning that it's the gates that get the beat down. It's evil that gets the beat down. And who is it? It's God doing it through us, right? Which we've covered that we can't do it alone. So Jesus redeems us, and he does it through us, right? And so I think, and I got one more slide up here to talk about the everyday. So like I said, as we showed the video with the big climactic saving moment where the one person steps in and takes the and the suffering for everybody else and saves the day, and how that can be engaging to think about, and we all kind of think we want something like that. We want to be that person to just save the day. What we covered, though, is that it's Jesus that is that Superman figure. But from what Jesus did, we can live the everyday life of being heroes by embodying what he did. And so here are just a few practical things I wanted to suggest of how we can help in this big conflict of good and evil. And I think step one is to become more connected with the church, right? Become more connected with your church community. Last time I got up here and spoke, I talked about something called social capital. Right, this idea that the more closer we are together, the more we try to intentionally spend time with one another, the stronger our bonds of loyalty become. And the stronger our bonds of loyalty that become, the better we work with one another. And the better we work with one another, the better we produce things, and the better our gifts and our talents come to play, and we're working as a team, and we're able to produce things and do awesome things in this world together. Last time I got up here, I showed the picture of the Bugs Life movie. Again, the very end, right? Just spoilers everywhere. But at the very end, when all the bugs are just standing together like this, and they figured out that if they all stood up together, that the grasshoppers couldn't steal their food. It's so funny when I just So we can't let the grasshoppers steal our food, guys. But I like to say it like this is, if everything were to go haywire, would you rather have a community of people that you have taken the time to invest in, to become a part of, to be connected with, so you guys all are together, or would you rather be alone when everything goes haywire, right? And so that's the next thing I want to talk about, is from this connection, from the starting point being in the church, God's mission plan for the redemption of the world, right, through Jesus, is now this outpouring into the communities around us, right? Us working together to become more connected in the communities around us. That means being a part of it, playing major roles or just doing the little things to help out, whatever way you can find to help in the community. I think it means getting to know your neighbors, getting to know the community members, being involved, right? Because then we start spreading this idea of this good social capital, and then we make it something bigger in the community. And now we're bringing Jesus into the community and bringing his redemption into the community, and we're starting to change the way society functions on just a small level. Again, if we focus too much on the big level, we're going to not really take in that every decision that does matter, right? The everyday, I like to think about it this way. The daily life is the majority of your life, right? Those mountaintop experiences are just like 1%. So it matters what we do in the everyday, because that's the majority. And if we make the right decisions every day, we see that they have actually a lot more a lot more impact than just the 1% of times when we had that one big moment, right? Even though that one big moment is important as well. And then lastly, I think, for me, I work in a youth ministry, and so cultivating the next generation is extremely important to me. And I think it's the key to bringing God's plan into the future. Right? I like to say it this way, is that restoration lies within the generations to come. Right? And those generations are dependent on us, those who are older now. Right? And so that's why I think, too, is the idea of families, stable households, families, all this stuff is so important. So parents working hard to be good parents and to raise your kids with these awesome values of God and to see that purpose and to fill them with the purpose of how they can bring, again, back to the very beginning, bring their talents and their gifts to bring order and God's kingdom into the world. Because they're going to grow up and they're going to take on the world, and I wonder what it's going to look like when they do, And so I think is that we can all use that as a focus. I say this a lot in youth ministry when I'm talking about it, is we can use the youth as the target point for all of us to come around, to work together, to cultivate, and to raise up. And in doing that, it kind of fulfills all three of those things. We're coming together as a church. We're building this as a community, focusing on bringing up this next generation in a proper and right way. And then they eventually inherit the world. And so I'll kind of end on this, is that God's plan for restoration was fulfilled in Jesus. And now Jesus is incorporating us into that plan, right? His plan from the beginning of time to bless Abraham's nation and to bless the world. So it's our job today to go on the offensive against the forces of darkness, find how in everyday life we can bless the world around us and to help the community, helping fill any problem and taking on the burdens on ourselves if necessary, so that we can bring this redemptive plan of changing the world through our local communities every day. So that's all I have to say, and I'm going to end up on a prayer, and then we'll get rocking and rolling. So, dear Father in heaven, thank you so much for this awesome day. Lord Jesus, I thank you for this awesome, enticing, purpose-filled vision you give to humanity. That you redeemed what was lost when humanity chose to turn from that, turn from following you and trusting in your wisdom. You redeemed it, God. Not only did you redeem it, but you made it even better through you, Lord. And I pray that we can, as a church, we can learn how to, every single day, just learn to cultivate a kingdom mindset, that we can focus on the small things and treat them with importance, that we can let the big picture of redemption fill every little part of our life with purpose and meaning, and that from that we can make sure to cultivate good relations amongst ourselves, good relations amongst the communities we live in, and we can also cultivate the future of the world through the next generation. Pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen.